Hello and welcome to the Chillers and Thrillers Christmas special. My name is Em, and in this podcast, I read true stories of people's encounters with the strange and unexplained. No comedy, skepticism, or gore, only 100% true spooky tales. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not, this time of year carries a very particular feeling. A wistful sort of melancholy that has us reflecting on the past 11 months of our lives, or feeling nostalgic for holidays long gone. I've always felt that, beyond the material side of it all, this season brings out something genuinely good in all people. As Christmas comes closer and the year winds down, there's a little bit more joy and a little bit more hope in the air. As most of you listeners know, I don't cover true crime in this podcast or anything gory, but the stories can definitely be quite spooky or even a bit dark. But in the spirit of the season, today's episode leans into wholesome ghost stories, visits and messages from loved ones who've passed on, gentle hauntings, and kind spirits with kind intentions. I also love the Victorian tradition of ghost stories on Christmas Eve. I think they were definitely onto something because the early winter nights, the howling wind, and the comfort of having a hot beverage in your hand while you listen to spooky stories definitely seems perfect for this season. This is also the second to last episode of Season 5. I can't believe this season has gone by so quickly. Next episode will be the last episode of the season, but if you enjoyed these stories and you want to keep listening, I will keep posting bonus episodes on the Patreon, so make sure to check that out as well. Now, let's not waste any more time. So, grab a hot chocolate, get comfortable, turn down the lights, and listen in. The Old Man in the Hallway. Submitted by user Ace3443. When I was about 5, about to turn 6, my family and I moved into a house in the neighborhood my parents grew up in. A nice 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that their friend's mom still owned and had a great price on rent. We updated the paint and the carpet right after moving in and cleaned up the yard from being overgrown. No one had lived there for a little while. Nothing strange to speak of at first. Then, my little brother and I started hearing scratching and footsteps above our room, coming from the attic. We told our dad multiple times, and to his credit, he crawled into the small attic every time to check on things. Nothing was ever there. It didn't happen every night, so we just kind of learned to ignore it. Fast forward a few years, and we've learned to live with some of the weird quirks of the house. The dishwasher would always stay slightly open unless it was running. Not unusual, probably something to do with the foundation. North Texas dirt isn't the most stable. There's also the cabinet door in the hallway. We could close it and it would latch shut, but in the morning it would be wide open. My parents asked us if we were opening at night if we went to use the bathroom. Being the little smart alecks that we were, we would say, "Yeah, we needed a baking pan in our jackets in the middle of the night, Dad." He'd laugh, shut the door, and we went about our business. My dad always had a weird feeling in the house. Nothing bad or malicious, but he always said he felt something. He'd stay up late in the office, chatting online. This was right when the internet had started getting into homes. Screeching dial-up and don't pick up the phone kind of internet. He always felt like he wasn't alone in the room. Without telling us, he had started doing some research into the home's history, going to the library and searching what we could online. Then, my brother's 8th birthday party rolls around. It's during summer vacation from school, and a lot of our family are there. We also had our great-uncle Gary come in from San Jose. Uncle Gary was always sensitive to the paranormal, and my dad wanted to ask him if he felt anything. Things from the party were winding down, and he found a moment alone with Gary outside. "Hey Gary, I've been wanting to ask you something. I was waiting until you were able to come over, and it's about the ghost? Yeah. I've been feeling like something is here. There's definitely someone here, Gary said. He's an old man. He died in the hallway from a heart attack. Very sad. He wasn't found for a while, but he loves you all, though. Loves watching the kids play in their room. Says it's just like having grandkids over. My dad was dumbfounded. He'd found a little blurb article in an old city paper about an old man being found in the home after a week or so, but he hadn't said a thing to Gary about it. So he just watches us? He asked. For the most part. He also opens the dishwasher in the hallway cabinet. It's his little game. Likes to do that to confuse you about it. How do you know all this? You've only been here a couple of hours. Oh, we just had a quick conversation in your office. He's fascinated by your computer, too. So he's not going to hurt us? Not at all. He wants y'all to stay here forever. Really. Dad never told my brother and I about this. He said he didn't want us to freak out and make us scared of the house. A few weeks later, my brother and I were doing what every 8 and 9-year-old does during the summer. Trying to stay up late, eat as much junk food as possible, watch TV, and play video games. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I woke up on the couch. I really had to go to the bathroom, so I get up and start going down the hallway. Well, when we had the carpet replaced, the guys who did it didn't put the tack strips all the way down at the beginning of the hallway, and any time you stepped on it, it clicks really loud. I'm walking and rubbing my eyes under my glasses. I look up, and just before going into the hallway, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was an old man, but he was all white and looked all misty. He was walking down the hall towards my parents' bedroom. I just stared at him. I stepped forward, and click. He turned around and looked at me, and I was overcome with a warm and comforting feeling. I wasn't scared in the slightest. He smiles at me, turns, and walks through my parents' bedroom door. I go to the bathroom and go back to sleep. The next morning, I tell my dad what I saw, and his face turns white. We go through everything, and I assure him I'm not scared or anything like that. He gives me a hug, and I go on with my day. And that was my first experience with anything paranormal. Toy Soldier, submitted by user TCB777777. My brother died in Iraq when his Humvee rolled over a bomb in 2005. Some time passes, and the pastor of the church my family goes to sleep and has a very vivid dream. He dreams my brother drives up to him in a Humvee. The pastor said he can hear his own voice, but he asked my brother Andrew what it was like to die. And he said, "At first it hurt, and then it didn't." He then tells the pastor, "Tell my dad it's all good between us." They had a falling out before he died, and my dad felt really bad about it. Now here's the weird part. My brother goes in his pocket and pulls out a toy soldier, the one that's throwing the grenade, and he holds it in front of the pastor's face. Then he gets in the Humvee and drives away. So the pastor wakes up and feels compelled to email my dad about the dream. So he does, and a while later my dad reads it and bursts into tears. Apparently, one day when my brother was little, he was playing with these toy soldiers, and they had a throwaway conversation about how the hand grenade guy was kind of useless because he's stuck in that throwing position. Dad says it wasn't anything he ever mentioned to anyone because it didn't particularly mean anything to him. It was just something that happened that he remembered. There's no way the pastor could have known this. So maybe the hand grenade guy isn't as useless as we thought. The check-in. submitted by user Chloe. Thinking back on my early childhood, I have the most distinct memory of waking up several times to find a woman standing next to my bed. At first, I thought it was my mom, but when I saw her again, it became clear that she was taller than my mom and had dark hair. My mom is 5'2" and has a curly blonde bob. The only thing my mom and my nightly visitor really had in common was a long white nightgown. She wasn't scary. I was never scared of her. It wasn't until very recently that I started to really think about these encounters. My father had been married 2 times prior to meeting my mother. His second marriage ended in divorce, but his first wife passed away from breast cancer. I have 3 much older half-siblings from my dad's first marriage. The youngest, my sister, was 7 when her mother passed. My sister had minor surgery when I was a kid and came to stay with us. She must have been about 25 at the time. I remember that there were unexpected complications from something otherwise routine, and she was in a lot of pain. She's also sleeping in my bedroom while I slept in my parents' bedroom. Eventually, she got better and went home to her apartment in Manhattan, and I got to sleep in my room again. And I'm pretty sure I saw my visitor after that. Years later, I was looking at pictures with my dad, and we came across a photograph of his first wife. It was like a key had slotted into place. I'm more certain than ever before that my sister's mother had been checking in on her. And when my sister got better and went home, she ended up checking in on me. A wholesome experience, submitted by user BuddhaGirl13. I'm going to share my most wholesome experience. My great aunt lived in a historic house on 80 acres of land in upstate New York. The house had been declared a landmark by the state, with a plaque that claimed the house had been built in 1640. The summer when I was 10 years old, I stayed with my grandparents, whose property was adjacent to my aunt's. It was about a quarter-mile hike to get to her house from theirs. My aunt invited me to stay the night with her one time, but she warned me that she had a ghost in her upstairs who loved children, so I was likely to get a visit. I thought she was messing with my head and didn't think much of it. She set me up in one of her upstairs guest rooms, just down the hall from her bedroom. I had settled in and gone to sleep. Deep in the night, I have no idea what time, I awoke to a soft glow in the hallway under the door of my room and the sound of soft footfalls creaking in the hall outside. At first, I thought it was my aunt, but the steps kept pacing back and forth, and the soft glow was moving with the footsteps up and down the hall. I began to get nervous, remembering my aunt's warnings about the ghost. I turned over in bed so that I couldn't see the moving glow in the hall and looked out the window next to my bed, trying to ignore the footsteps, and fell asleep again. A while later, I woke up to my bedroom door creaking open, and my room was lit by that soft glow. I felt a cold chill on my back and tensed up with fear, shutting my eyes tight. I felt a gentle hand begin to stroke my hair away from my face. I thought maybe it was my aunt, so I opened my eyes and looked around. The room is still lit with the candlelight glow, but there's no visible source. I lay back down, my eyes squeezed shut. The sensation of the hand stroking my head comes back, and I hear a gentle shh. Then I feel a soft kiss on my forehead, and I'm filled with a deep sense of love and peace. The glow leaves the room, and I was able to fall asleep right away. I stayed over with my aunt a couple of times during the summer and would hear the footsteps in the hall and see the soft glow that went with them. But she never came into my room again that I was aware of. I think she didn't want to scare me. Pet, submitted by user BlackCat1206. When I was 5 or 6, my mama and I lived in my grand's council home with extended family. My gran and granddad had lived there for years with 9 children and at times a few grandchildren, and my great-grandmother for decades before I was even born. My great-grandmother had passed more than 10 years before I was born when my mama was quite young. My mama and I share a large back room which doubled up with a sitting room playroom. One night, I was sleeping in my bed facing my toy cupboard, which had no door but a really pretty sheet, which my mama had painted and nailed onto the frame of the cupboard to keep my toys tidy. I remember suddenly opening my eyes to see a little old lady in the doorway of my toy cupboard. I wasn't scared, which in itself was slightly strange, as I felt the old lady was familiar and safe. She just appeared to be a regular little old lady with slightly strange-looking clothes. Without moving her mouth, she said, "It's okay, pet. I've just come to see how you are. Go back to sleep." The words sounded clear in my head. Being 5 or 6, I said, "Okay," and went back to sleep. The next day, I was playing in the garden with Mama, and I told her about what I said was a dream. Mama, who was very close to her grandmother, looked at me, then asked me to describe the old lady, so I did. Mama looked a little strange, then changed the subject. Years later, we were talking about family with my big cousin Jimmy, who was living with Mama and I at the time. I was about 8 and Jimmy was around 15 or 16. And Mama told me that when I described that little old lady, I actually described our great-grandmother. Jimmy laughed and said when he had the same bedroom, he had seen our great-grandmother also in the same place as I saw her. There were only 3 differences. Jimmy knew our great-grandmother before she passed, albeit he was very young, but remembered her well. It was the middle of the day when he saw her, and she just smiled at him without speaking. My mama got out a really old-looking family photo, and in the middle of family members, I knew looking younger was the very same kindly-looking little old lady. An additional note, Pet is used as a pet name by many people from Newcastle, and I think Sunderland as well, where my great-grandmother's family originated from. My dad, submitted by user PaleFinish3513. My dad is here in my house and says hi very frequently. The behavior tracks because in mortal form he loved attention and was a prankster and promised to haunt us. What a ham. I'm only really putting this out into the universe because, boy, would he love that, and I'm sure he sees me typing this out right now. Since he's passed, lights come on at various hours. Things are checked around during emotional conversation about him, as in, stop whining about it already. He was the type to deflect serious conversations with jokes. The TV or Spotify will turn on by themselves and start playing the Beatles, his favorite. The TV pauses itself. Things that never happened before. Once, a video of him playing piano started on my phone in the other room. I had been standing in the dark bathroom feeling sad about his passing, blowing my nose as one does. In the mirror, I saw the light come on in the spare bedroom down the hall behind me, of which the door was closed. No one else was home. I went into there to investigate and stood there for a minute and tell him, okay, I'll stop whining. My eyes hit a Beatles poster in the closet on my way out, and I hear my phone in the living room start blaring a video of him playing Oh Darlin' on the piano. I'm supposed to be learning it, but it's been too upsetting. We made the video together the last time I saw him. He's teaching it to me in the video. There's a bit of a precedent here. After his passing, my sisters and I had a Ouija board session, and he was able to tell me the secret word we had agreed on in life. He was a fan of Houdini and did magic tricks, so he thought that concept was cool. I'm confident it's him. He was a big personality, and there's no mistaking his attitude. Having a ghost dad is a comfort, but also a little frustrating. Are you just saying hi and taking care of us in whatever ghostly capacity you have? Or is there a message that isn't getting through? It feels more mischievous than anything, and he always took great joy in pestering my sisters and me. And yeah, if we were ever sad, he clowned around. I log it all to look for patterns that might just be house quirks, but it's pretty random and connected in some way to what we're doing at the time. I'll be heartbroken if it ever stops. I write to him in Google Docs or my phone notepad, assuming he can see it in some way. He loved to talk for hours on the phone, so hopefully that can be the spirit equivalent and keep him happy. The bedroom light comes on while we're trying to sleep if I don't talk directly to him for a while. Coincidence? Who knows, but sure doesn't hurt to tell him hi and catch up. I hope maybe if someone hears this that has lost their dad, my experience gives a little hope that your dad is still around. And don't worry, your ghost dad will never be as annoying as my ghost dad. The Washington Angel, submitted by user Brown Buttery Biscuits. Not my story, but a business friend once told me he went to Washington for a meeting with some government officials one year. After his meeting, he was walking through this park towards his hotel, and there was a bunch of children on a school trip running around everywhere. As he was walking, he noticed this lady in a long blue overcoat walking towards him on the same path. As she gets closer, she asks him for direction to a place, and he pulls out his map to show her. Eventually, she starts asking what he is here for and about his family. And then she says, "Steve, do you have anything to be thankful for?" He found this an odd question, but he replied. She then asked if he was worried about anything, and he responded, "Yeah, I just want my daughter to have a healthy child because she's pregnant right now." The lady then says she would like to bless him. He thinks this is weird, but doesn't want to be rude and accepts. She places a hand on his shoulder and does a blessing. They say goodbyes and start walking away. Steve then turns around after about 3 or 4 steps and looks back, and the lady is gone. He can't see her anywhere in this massive open park. And he also realizes where there were kids and people running around him before, now there's like a 200-foot radius around him with no one in it. He isn't very religious, but he is convinced that he was touched by an angel. The Elderly Visitor, submitted by user Crazy Cat Lushy. When I was 18, I was attending university and renting a room in an old house a few blocks off campus. Only one other room in the house was rented, and the girl who lived there spent most nights at her boyfriend's place, so I basically had the entire house to myself. I would estimate that it was built sometime between 1910 and 1920 based on the style and the neighborhood, but I could be wrong. I do know it was about 100 years old at the time and the oldest home I've ever had. It was my first time living alone, and since it was such a big empty space, I spent most of my time in my room behind a locked door. It wasn't super creepy or anything, but at night when I was alone, I tended to avoid leaving my room unless absolutely necessary. It had the same uneasy feeling of turning off the basement light and then running up the stairs as fast as you could in the dark. Not for any real reason, but it made your heart race anyway. Near the end of my first semester, I contracted influenza A. I've been pretty fortunate with my physical health up until then, and it was the sickest I'd ever been in my life. I could barely peel myself out of bed to go to the bathroom or to feed myself. I was incredibly weak. My whole body ached, and I was running a very high fever. I actually developed arthritis in my joints as a symptom, which I didn't even know was possible. I remember waking up with a puddle of sweat collected in the hollow of my throat at one point. It was absolutely disgusting. A few days into the ordeal, I woke up to find an elderly man sitting by the side of my bed. There was no chair there, but he was very obviously in a seated position. And for some reason, I didn't react with shock at all. I was completely unafraid. I asked him what he was doing there, and he simply said, "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I must have fallen back asleep because that's all I remember of the visit. This could have easily been a NyQuil-induced dream or a fevered hallucination, but to me, it was absolutely real. He was there, and he spoke to me, and I felt very comforted by his presence. A few months later, I had a friend of mine from another school come to visit for a weekend. We did some exploring of the house and found a hatch to the basement. It was filled with old tools and hardware, but one thing stood out to me. On the wall was a medicine cabinet, absolutely stuffed with old pill bottles, regular things like Anacin, and other old brand names I had to look up. It also contained many prescription pill bottles that were too faded to read. For some reason, as soon as I saw them, my elderly visitor came to mind. I wonder if maybe he had some experience caring for a sick relative and came to visit me when I was ill because it was a familiar situation. I did ask the landlord about previous occupants, but they had purchased the house only a few years earlier and didn't know much. And I suppose I'll never know. Wholesome Haunting, submitted by user Hidden in the Maze. I'm 18 years old. When I was 6, my dad died. He was an amazing dad, and when my siblings and I were babies, he was very protective. He was also in the military, and before he went on his last deployment, we made a Build-A-Bear. And when you squeezed the hand, it would play a recording of him singing "You Are My Sunshine," which he always sang to us at nighttime, or to calm one of us down when we were upset or got hurt. When my dad returned from his deployment, the song wouldn't play. You could squeeze all you want and it wouldn't play. We thought it was just broken because little kids break things. Well, 2 weeks after my dad died, I fell down the stairs. From upstairs, I could hear my dad's recording playing. It hadn't worked in 2 years after he returned, and now it suddenly worked. My mom, my sister, and our brothers were all stunned. We tried to play it again, but nothing. We thought it was just a fluke, some crazy coincidence. Well, my sister's boyfriend broke up with her the next week. She came home crying, and the moment she stepped through the front door, the bear goes off again. And it kept happening. When one of my brothers stubbed his toes, when my sister smacked herself in the head with the cabinet door. For years, every time one of us was upset, you could hear the bear. It stopped a couple of years ago, and we all figured that my dad decided we were all teenagers now and didn't need his protection anymore. My sister didn't go to college because of her disability, and she's taking some time to heal and figure out her own path, and I'm the second oldest. I just got my first college acceptance letter. I came in, tore the packaging open, and jumped for joy. We were all crowded around the kitchen when we heard it. The freaking bear. It hadn't gone off in years. The Last Goodbye, submitted by user No Contribution 730. My coworker's wife claims to be a medium. I've always been pretty skeptical about the legitimacy of mediums, but this experience made me a believer, if I'm being honest. This isn't the creepiest story out there, but I've never personally experienced something like it, so it gave me chills. One day, my fire department had a family dinner night. I noticed that one of the new guys sparked up a conversation with my coworker, the one whose wife claims to be a medium. I didn't hear the conversation, but I watched them talk, until suddenly the new guy turns pale and opens his eyes real big. He left the room, and I followed to see what happened. He goes on to tell me that the medium mentioned to my coworker that a man was following the new guy around. The medium thought it was a family member at first, but soon realized it was an apparition after watching its behavior and noticing that nobody was interacting with it. She described the apparition as an older man with a beard, blue eyes, and a tattoo on his hand. She said he was wearing a red flannel shirt with blue jeans, a large belt buckle, and cowboy boots. My coworker went on to say that this description was his grandfather, who passed over 15 years ago. He said he was supposed to visit his grandfather several times when he was sick and dying, but never got the chance, and it always carried weight on his shoulder because he didn't see him to say goodbye before passing. He said he knew it was real because he doesn't have any digital photos of his grandfather, only developed photos tucked away with his personal items. He said his grandfather wore the exact same thing every day, which was the clothing described. On top of that, he was still new enough that we had never had any conversations about his family, and he had never met my coworker's wife. A few days later, I asked my coworker about the incident, and that's when he told me his wife was a medium. He said he didn't like talking about it because it genuinely scares his wife and she doesn't see apparitions often. Personally, I felt that it added to my belief that his experience was true because I knew my coworker and his wife for years and they never mentioned it. Supposedly, she doesn't like talking about it, which is why my coworker stepped in to tell the new guy after it happened. Again, not the creepiest of stories, but it made me a believer. This experience was so extreme for the new guy that he went out and joined a ghost hunting club and now travels all over the country to experience haunted sites. He also mentioned he did not believe in ghosts prior to this experience. And that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed these stories, and I hope maybe they brought you a little bit of cheer or warm-heartedness in this cold Christmas season. Next episode is our end of year special, which features Glitch in the Matrix stories, as has become tradition with the podcast. If you have any of your own experiences that you'd like to share, please feel free to email me at chillersandthrillers@gmail.com. Otherwise, feel free to let me know your thoughts. You can leave a comment if you're listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, or you can join the Patreon for free, where we can just discuss upcoming episode themes, and I also post things that are inspiring me for the more recent episodes. Until next time, I hope all you ghouls and ghosts have a very Merry Christmas, no matter how you celebrate it. And if you don't have any plans, try checking out my favorite movie, It's a Wonderful Life. It always makes me feel good this time of year. I hope you ghouls and ghosts stay safe, and I'll see you soon.